Alright, I'm Tony. This is my Animal Trailblazer SS featuring a Holley Sniper cross ram. Today's video is going to explain a little bit how I wired it up, how I got it to work with the factory ECM, not using Holley's $4,000 plus controller. I came upon this by calling Holley and questioning them on their controllers, how they worked, and how many throttle position sensors they had. And he pretty much told me that the second throttle body mimics the first throttle body, and there's only one throttle position sensor in their setup. So before spending all that kind of money, I was going to try it myself. And the way I did it is just went to Summit and I looked up a throttle body extension. So I purchased a small harness. It was about this long, and it's just to extend your throttle body, you know, in case you got a different intake manifold. I bought that, and I bought two pigtails, a pigtail connector for each throttle body, and then I spliced them in together. And basically there's two leads on the second throttle body that control the motor. All the rest of the wires are just for the throttle position sensor. So I didn't connect any of those. I have two wires running to this second throttle body. This is my primary, has my throttle position sensor and the lead wires in it. And it's a simple little Y harness, just like I said. Nothing fancy. I insulated it, made sure it was, you know, the best I could, and I've never had a problem. The truck's been running for over 2 years now. All right, so a little bit more into detail about this harness. Like I said, this is just a harness extension, so I could get this male plug to plug into here. Obviously this would plug into the throttle body normally, so they don't sell a pigtail for that. So I purchased a harness extension. All right, and inside of here is where I connected all my wires together. All right, so I'll pull this back a little bit and show you. One throttle body uses two wires. Don't go by the color code. I bought this pigtail and it uses the red and the yellow, and then this one it uses two different wires. So you can't go by the color codes on the pigtails. You got to look up the pin location. Mine happened to be 6 pin. They make an 8 pin also. So I looked up the schematic for the wire locations for the throttle body for my throttle position sensor. And then the two other ones that are there are for the force motor that controls the motor for the throttle body. So that's the only two that I'm using for the secondary throttle body. So simple Y harness, plugs in to each throttle body. And plugs into my main harness. It doesn't get much simpler than that. It doesn't have a throttle body controller on there like you see a lot of people say you have to have a throttle body controller. I looked up the throttle body controller. I was probably minutes away from pulling the trigger on it before I got this truck running, and they didn't have all the parts I needed in stock, luckily, so I didn't purchase it. My truck was near completed, so I made this harness and I ended up trying it without any throttle body controller. As far as the throttle bodies go, you know, you can look all over the market. They range anywhere from $50 to $500 for throttle bodies. I went on Amazon. First of all, I did some Google searching. I wanted to run a 90mm LS7 throttle body. So I found the GM part number and I went to Amazon, started searching that part number, found a supplier that offered these throttle bodies brand new. They're obviously not an AC Delco brand, but I purchased two of them from him. I've had zero issues with them. They work flawlessly. So I can't say more. I think I spent $80 a piece for these right off of Amazon. Just search for them with the GM part number. Get a lot of questions also about the fitment on this intake in the Trailblazer. Originally, when I took this factory intake out, it was wedged underneath this panel right here. Couldn't hardly get the intake out of there. It was really, really tight fit. This intake, as you can see, has some clearance. You know, it's not as tight as it looks. I should have replaced this panel when I had the engine out, and this thing's caught fire on me one time, so it kind of burned this up. It's a whole nother story. Had nothing to do with this, but yeah, you know, as far as fitment goes, got plenty of room on the Trailblazer. Slopes down in the back, it's up high right here, but still clears the hood, doesn't touch anything. All right, you've seen in some of my earlier videos, we used to have these intake tubes on the truck, made out of aluminum or steel or something, not sure. They came as, you know, basic Silverado air kit. So I purchased 2 of them originally, managed to get both of these to work. Had my air temp sensor right here, kind of where it was originally. But on a hot day, my air temperatures, intake air temperatures, were through the roof. I mean, 145, 150 degrees at times. So it was crazy. I had to do something about it. So I purchased these plastic, some type of plastic. I got these plastic and rubber couplers instead. And this has dropped my air temps down in the 90s, 80s and 90s, compared to 130s, 140s, what I used to have. So it's really cooled it down. It doesn't pick up the heat from my fans nearly as much as the aluminum or steel did. Thing runs way better. So plastic, rubber, insulation, anything you can do to keep those air temps down. Another thing we had to do on this truck to get this intake manifold to work was reconfigure the power steering and the alternator. Originally, this truck had the alternator sitting right here in front of the throttle body. So that was a huge issue. Found online, Holley made this bracket for a low alternator and a high power steering. And that's the combination we had to use in order to get this intake manifold to work. Move the power steering to the top, put the alternator on the bottom, problem solved. One of the last things I really had to change on this intake manifold, or on my truck to get it to work, was I had to purchase this fitting from Holley. Screws right into the back of the fuel rail, and then the original line just snaps right onto it. No modifications needed whatsoever. So I've never had any issues whatsoever with the throttle bodies themselves. You know, I had a lot of issues tuning the truck until I figured out, you know, I didn't know what I was doing at first. Had some help, you know, with a couple remote tunes. Had a couple local guys look at it. Their tune was worse than mine. So eventually, after a year of driving and tuning this truck, I finally got it running 99% near perfect. Drivability, I drive it every single day. It starts up, it drives perfect, it doesn't surge anymore. I love the intake. The intake has so much torque, it's ridiculous. When I look for an intake, that's what my main focus was, building this motor for torque. It's a real heavy vehicle, it's 5,000 pounds, and torque's what's going to get it to move. You know, I don't like revving engines high RPM, so I like to make it work with torque. And believe me, this intake has tremendous response and torque. It's amazing. It feels like a big block. So that's about the only thing I can explain. Hope this helps. If you got more questions, comments, feel free to leave them. I'll try to explain anything else I can. Yeah, that's it. Animal TBSS. Like and subscribe.